courtroom in Flagstaff was not simply the site of a divorce hearing. It became the arena where 2 decades of faith, family, and fame unraveled in public. When Judge Carla Reynolds entered that morning, the silence that fell was not the usual hush of legal formality, but the heavy quiet of something closer to a funeral. At the back of the room sat Mary, Janelle, and Christine, women who had once been bound by covenant, but who now shared little more than the scars of a life lived under Kody Brown's authority. Their presence alone was extraordinary. The 3 original wives, each of whom had walked away in her own time, were now spectators to the fall of the one woman Kody had once declared his true partner. "I never thought I'd see the day Kody turned on Robyn before a judge," Mary muttered under her breath, the words as bitter as they were disbelieving. Robyn, seated at the center, looked less like the polished reality television star audiences had grown used to, and more like a woman hollowed out. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pinned neatly, but her hands trembled in her lap and her eyes, rimmed with red, betrayed sleepless nights. The story of how she came to this point began 3 months earlier on a gray Thursday afternoon. Returning home with the children, she opened her front door to find a manila envelope pushed through the letterbox. Inside were divorce papers. No preamble, no late-night conversations, no chance to salvage what she thought was still a marriage. That evening, she left message after message on Kody's phone, pleading, bargaining, begging for a meeting. But the silence was unbroken. By the end of the week, she did not learn the truth from her husband, but from the gossip columns. Kody, meanwhile, was anything but absent. Behind closed doors, he had already sought legal advice, met with TLC producers, and even spoken quietly with Christine. Not to make peace, but to gather leverage. The narrative was being prepared before the ink was dry on the petition. He would not be cast as a husband who abandoned his wife. He would be portrayed as a man freeing himself from manipulation. Words like codependency, strain, and toxicity littered his solicitor's drafts, reframing him as a victim rather than the architect of division. By the time proceedings began, the stakes were clear. Judge Reynolds was not simply presiding over a marital dispute. She was presiding over the symbolic death of a family once paraded as a model of faith and resilience. Robyn clung to the microphone, her voice wavering. "I object, Your Honor. This is a misunderstanding. With time, with counseling, with prayer, it can be repaired." Her words hung desperately in the air. Kody gave a short, derisive laugh, not loud, but audible enough to slice through the silence, before his solicitor stood to declare, "There will be no reconciliation. My client wishes neither to be legally nor emotionally bound to Mrs. Brown. This marriage is unsalvageable." Then came the most remarkable twist. The subpoenas had not originated from Kody's side at all, but from Robyn's. She had summoned the other wives, the very women who had spent years watching Kody's affections drift towards her, to testify about his coldness and volatility. Christine sat with arms folded, glaring across the courtroom. Janelle leafed through her written statement, calm but steely. Mary's clenched fists rested in her lap, her knuckles white. For years, they had been told that Robyn was the chosen one, the favorite, the embodiment of Kody's future. Now they watched as she tried to hold together what they themselves had already lost. At the interval, Robyn leaned towards the microphone and whispered words that silenced even the hum of journalists' laptops. "He was my last hope of a real family. I gave him everything, my friends, my reputation, my heart, and now he abandons me as though I never mattered." For a moment, the weight of her voice was inescapable. Even Kody, rigid in his seat, kept his eyes fixed on the wall ahead. Outside, the courthouse was besieged by reporters and television crews. Some shouted questions, others simply filmed the scene. Inside, TLC executives huddled in corners, torn between dismay and the knowledge that this might be the explosive climax reality television thrives on. Yet beyond the spectacle, the human cost was already evident. Robyn's younger children cried themselves to sleep. Her eldest son tried and failed to reach Kody. Even Aurora, once held up by him as a shining example of loyalty, found her calls ignored. And in a bitter irony, Kody was spotted days later having lunch with Hunter and Gwendolyn, children of Janelle and Christine. Something unthinkable a year earlier. "He's rewriting history," one insider remarked. "He wants to be seen not as the man who abandoned his wives, but as the man wronged by them." Robyn, however, refused to be erased. She gathered her own dossier, affectionate text messages from Kody only weeks before the filing, emails showing he had involved her in decision-making, bank records demonstrating that she had helped clear his debts, and production notes suggesting he had colluded with TLC to control the storyline. In her telling, this was not the story of a manipulative wife discarded, but of a husband rewriting the truth to serve his image. Yet, as the evidence piled higher, the larger truth loomed. The sister wives' dream had already collapsed. Once presented to viewers as a testimony of faith, love, and endurance, it had ended not in a home full of children and laughter, but in a sterile courtroom under oath, before a weary judge and in front of 3 women who had long known what the world was only just beginning to see. That the fairy tale had been crumbling for years, and that Robyn's whispered plea was not the beginning of healing, but the sound of the final curtain falling. And falling. Handwritten letters from the children, sweetly declaring their father the best man in the world, had been carefully preserved by Robyn over the years. She had placed them into folders, year by year, a small archive of devotion that she believed once reflected the truth of her marriage. To Robyn, this hearing was not simply about legalities. It was the betrayal of everything she had surrendered. "He told me I was his forever," she sobbed during one of her private legal conferences. "He said he'd never leave. He said I saved him." Her solicitor prepared an impassioned appeal, insisting that his client had entered into the legal marriage in good faith, had endured the glare of the cameras, and had carried the burden of a fractured household on her shoulders while Kody unraveled the family's foundations. "Now he wishes to cast her aside as though she were nothing," the barrister intoned. "This is not merely a legal matter. It is spiritual, emotional, and deeply symbolic." The ripple effects were immediate beyond the courtroom walls. Christine was the first to react publicly when the story broke. "I wouldn't wish this on anyone," she said, "but I can't pretend I didn't see it coming." Janelle was more oblique, posting a cryptic quotation to her Instagram story. "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Mary, perhaps the most wounded of all, maintained a heavy silence. Friends whispered that she felt hollow rather than vindicated. "He destroyed us all for Robyn," she was said to have confided, "and now she's tasting the same knife." Back inside the courtroom, Robyn could no longer contain her emotions. As Judge Reynolds returned from recess, Robyn rose to her feet, her voice breaking. "Your Honor," she declared, "I never thought I would be here, pleading with the man I legally married, the man I loved, not to discard me like rubbish." From her handbag, she withdrew a folded sheet of paper, an old love letter Kody had written in 2015, on the night they legalized their union. She passed it to the judge with trembling hands. "He wrote that I filled him up, that I calmed his chaos, that he would never hurt me." Tears streamed freely down her face as she looked across the aisle. "Was that all a lie, Kody?" The room was spellbound. Kody refused even to glance her way. The silence was profound enough that even Mary, rarely one to cry, wiped her eyes with a tissue. The judge sighed, weighing the document against the legal paperwork. "This court does not sit to determine who loved more deeply or who hurt more bitterly," she reminded the gallery. "This court sits to determine whether a legal marriage can or should be dissolved." Yet the chamber was thick with more than procedure. The specters of fidelity and betrayal seemed to hover at every bench. Christine leaned across to Janelle and murmured, "This isn't just a divorce. It's his final betrayal. I didn't destroy the family. I gave it everything." Her voice cracked audibly enough for the stenographer to pause mid-typing. Then the battlefield shifted. Robyn requested to speak on her own behalf, setting down a small blue folder on the witness stand. Within it was a timeline, group texts, voice messages, budget spreadsheets, and screenshots of affectionate texts from Kody sent mere weeks before he filed for divorce. "The truth must be seen," she insisted. "He didn't simply wake up and decide he wanted out. He is rewriting history to make me look like the problem, to walk away clean, without consequence. But I won't let him." One by one, she presented her exhibits. Exhibit A, a text message only 19 days before the filing where Kody had written, "You're my safe space. I'd be lost without you." Exhibit B, bank statements confirming she had withdrawn $16,000 from her savings to help pay overdue taxes and legal fees from one of his businesses. Exhibit C, a heartfelt letter to TLC producers in 2023 begging that Kody be allowed a filming hiatus because he was mentally unstable and still grieving. Exhibit D, a printed family group chat where Robyn pleaded with Christine not to leave, even offering to step back herself so Kody could find balance with the others. "I did everything I could to preserve this family," Robyn told the judge, her eyes locking on Kody for the first time. "I bent myself in every direction to be the wife he wanted. And now he punishes me because the others walked away. You know that's true." For the first time, Kody's composure cracked. He shifted restlessly in his chair, glaring at his solicitor, then at the judge, before finally muttering at Robyn. "I never asked you to save me. I never asked you to carry the guilt of a broken home. And if I said things I didn't mean, it was because I was trying to survive too." His tone was low but bitter. Robyn's face hardened. "You let them blame me," she snapped. "You stood by while they painted me as the homewrecker. And now you join them." A gasp traveled through the courtroom like a wave. Even Mary lifted her head from her folded hands. In a dramatic pivot, Robyn turned on Christine directly. "You gave up first. You quit on him and you blamed me so you could walk away without guilt. You were jealous from the very beginning. You never once gave me a chance." Christine rose slowly, the air taut as a bowstring. "I left because I had to rescue myself," she retorted firmly. "Let's not pretend otherwise. Kody stopped loving all of us long before he married you. You just made it easier for him to ignore the truth." Another audible gasp swept the room. The court stenographer even faltered for a moment. Judge Reynolds struck her gavel twice. "This is not a family reunion," she warned sharply. "This is a courtroom." Turning to Robyn, she asked coolly, "What exactly do you hope to achieve here?" Robyn's answer came without hesitation. "I need this divorce suspended. I need counseling, mediation, a chance to repair what's broken. Because this marriage was never simply between Kody and me. It was about our children, our faith, our covenant." The judge seemed poised to reply when the doors at the back opened softly. Heads turned as Logan Brown, Kody's eldest son, stepped quietly into the chamber. Kody himself looked startled. Logan had avoided all public comment for years, but now he walked with deliberate calm to the clerk's desk to be sworn in. "My name is Logan Taylor Brown," he said evenly, "and I have something to say." Logan's testimony cut through the air like steel. "This isn't just a marriage. This is a pattern," he began. His voice was firm, his eyes steady. "I've watched my father move from one relationship to another, shutting down when challenged, pushing people away whenever they disagreed with him. Dad, you didn't just leave Robyn, you left all of us years ago." Kody stiffened, jaw clenched, but Logan pressed on. "Robyn isn't perfect, but she fought for you. She defended you when no one else would. And now when she's broken, you're abandoning her. That isn't love. That's cowardice." The words struck the room like thunder. Mary openly wept. Christine gave a small, silent nod. Robyn buried her face in her hands. Kody, however, said nothing. As Logan stepped down, Robyn rose once more. Her voice was hoarse but determined. "I never asked to be the legal wife. I never wanted to be the last one standing. I stayed because I believed in this family, in him. You can divorce me, Kody, but at least tell me it meant something." She looked at him, eyes searching, but Kody simply sat motionless, staring at the far wall. Judge Reynolds called another recess. Court officers ushered the gallery out. Reporters rushed to their phones. Producers whispered urgently about footage and airtime. And in the hallway outside, there was only one undeniable conclusion. The illusion was shattered. Robyn was no villain. Kody was no hero. The family had been dismantled, and the so-called sister wives were not wives anymore at all. They were collateral damage. The air inside the courtroom grew taut with tension as the moment arrived for the remaining wives to have their say. One by one, the women who had once lived under a single roof, sharing one man and one fractured dream, were called to testify. The judge, her tone measured and firm, addressed the gallery with quiet authority. "The court now calls Christine Ruth Brown to the stand." Christine rose deliberately, her presence radiating a controlled fire. Dressed in a deep green blazer that mirrored the defiance in her eyes, and wearing a delicate gold pendant shaped like a sun, she walked slowly, but with purpose. Gone was the warm, endlessly smiling woman viewers had known for years. In her place stood someone sharpened by pain and hardened by betrayal. "State your name for the record." "Christine Ruth Brown." "And your relationship to the parties involved?" "Ex-wife to Kody Brown, former sister-wife to Robyn Brown." The judge nodded. Christine's eyes cut across the room, first to Robyn, then to Kody. Her voice did not tremble. "Let me make one thing clear," she said, steady as steel. "I did not leave Robyn, I left him." She pointed toward Kody, who shifted uneasily in his chair but offered no response. "He gave up. He gave up trying. He gave up showing up. He gave up seeing me. And every time I tried to address it, he deflected. He blamed Robyn, used her name as the excuse for why he could no longer be a husband to me." Her words sliced through the silence. Christine went further, revealing memories long buried. Family dinners Kody skipped to sit at Robyn's table. Birthdays he ignored for her children. Meetings that turned into private councils once Robyn was by his side. He crowned Robyn queen of the family, she declared. The rest of us? We were treated like staff. Even the court stenographer faltered for a moment, stunned by the rawness of her testimony. Robyn lowered her head, tears forming, but she said nothing. Then it was Janelle's turn. She entered composed, carrying navy blue folders as though walking into a corporate negotiation. Where Christine had been fire, Janelle was ice, deliberate, cool, and devastating in her precision. State your name. Janelle Brown. I was Kody's second wife for nearly 30 years. She laid her evidence before the court, a printed 2022 calendar marked with family schedules. Look here, she said calmly. Every week reserved for Robyn, none for Mary, sporadic dates for Christine and myself. By April, I stopped counting. Her composure wavered only once when she spoke of her sons. My boys Gabe and Garrison saw it. They felt abandoned, cast aside. They resented Robyn, yes, but more than that, they resented their father. Her voice cracked. You pushed them away, Kody. You let them die inside long before we lost Garrison. The courtroom froze. Christine turned her head. Robyn gasped behind her hand. Kody bowed low, shoulders heavy, eyes fixed on the floor. Finally, Mary was summoned. Once the legal wife, once the anchor of the family, she now walked slowly to the stand, hands trembling as she clutched a single sheet of paper. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but the words carried profound weight. Mary Brown, she said. First wife to Kody Brown, and the first to be forgotten. She read haltingly from her paper. We married in 1990. We built a life, and when he wanted more wives, I agreed, because I believed in him. I believed in the vision, and when Robyn came, I thought she was an answer to our prayers. But she was the beginning of the end. You didn't take him from me, Robyn. He gave himself up. Her voice broke. She lifted her gaze, not with anger, but with infinite sorrow. The judge leaned back, visibly moved. This testimony goes beyond the matter of divorce, she said gravely. It speaks to years of emotional neglect, generational trauma, children raised in chaos, and women silenced until now. She drew a deep breath. But this court cannot adjudicate love or betrayal. The question before us is simple in law. Does Mr. Brown have the right to dissolve his marriage? She turned to Robyn. Mrs. Brown, are you still contesting this divorce? Robyn's shoulders quivering, rose. She looked at the three women who had just spoken, at the gallery, at Kody. Her voice was fragile, yet resolute. Yes, she whispered. I am still fighting. A murmur rippled through the room. Kody leaned toward his lawyer. Christine wrapped an arm around Mary. Janelle exhaled deeply. Robyn returned to her seat, clutching the marriage certificate Kody had once signed. The air was heavy until Kody himself stood, transforming the entire moment. He rose from the defendant's table, his movements deliberate. Adjusting his coat, he walked, not to the stand, not to the door, but directly before Robyn. The judge raised a brow. The bailiff shifted, uncertain. Mr. Brown, the judge asked. Do you have a statement? Kody nodded once, his voice calm, almost eerily so. I loved you, Robyn, I did. And I believed you loved me. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being your partner. I became your prisoner. Gasps echoed across the gallery. His words poured out with chilling clarity. You weren't just my wife. You were my validation, my conscience, my therapist, my jailer. I became a puppet. And you let me believe the others envied me, that they didn't understand me, that only you cared. But the truth is, you isolated me. You left me with no one, and I woke up one morning and realized I wasn't happy. That is why I filed, and I will not undo it. Robyn staggered as if struck, tears streaming. You're lying, she wept. You're shaming me to escape your guilt. You destroyed this family. Kody's reply was colder than winter air. I didn't destroy it. I simply stopped pretending it was still whole. The judge, her patience spent, gathered her papers. The evidence presented confirms irreconcilable differences. Mrs. Brown, the court acknowledges your protest, but there are no legal grounds to stop this divorce. Accordingly, this marriage is hereby dissolved, effective immediately. She brought down the gavel, final and unyielding. Kody did not look back. He collected his coat, nodded to his attorney, and walked out without a word, without so much as a glance at Robyn. No fanfare, no apology, just absence. Robyn remained seated long after the courtroom had emptied. pale, broken, whispering into her hands, "Now I'm the one he's abandoned." Outside, the world was already reacting. Social media erupted. TLC issued a sterile statement. Fans filled the void with speculation. Some jeered that Robyn had played the long game and lost. Others observed that Kody had dismantled the throne he had once built for her. Even the Brown children posted cryptic remarks online. Inside that courtroom, the truth had become undeniable. Robyn was not the villain. Kody was not the hero. And the plural family they had once paraded before millions lay in ruins. They were not wives anymore. They were casualties.